In the beginning of this series, I mentioned that we wouldn't really go into great detail on mixing and mastering a song. But in this video, let's just give a quick overview on how to mix instruments in a track like this. So while I've been writing, I've been adding some effects processing onto the tracks. And if you just look through, it's mainly just been some EQs and compressors. So the EQs have just been to place an instrument in a specific area in the frequency range. And then where there's compression, it's just to help tame the dynamics and make a track sit better in the mix. So starting off with the EQs, these have mainly just been some plugins to accentuate or attenuate any problem frequencies. Like for example, on these bass instruments, there have been some boosts in the bass hair areas just to enhance the bass in the song. So for example, on this damage instrument, there's been a boost at 100 Hz and then a slight dip at 2000 Hz where some of the higher register percussion is playing. And then for example, on the damaged metals, you can see there's a boost around the 2 to 3000 Hz region. So that other damaged kit is making some space for this while you can boost this instrument. And also any tracks that don't have any low content, it's good to just do some cuts or some low shelves just to shelve out or cut these low frequencies that might be taking up some valuable headroom in your mix. Also on some of these impact hard percussion sounds, I've added some transient shapers, and this is just to increase the attack, just to give these types of tracks a bit more punch and presence in your mix. And like I showed you in the reverb video, I've used some orchestral seating or panning to sit the instruments exactly where they would in an orchestra. So just taking a look at these strings, if I bring up a seating chart, let me just close that transient shaper and bring through the seating plan of the orchestra, you can see the first violins have been panned all the way to the left. Second violins are somewhere near that. I could actually go in and just tweak that a bit more if I wanted to. Then the violas can sit to the right. Here they're sitting in the middle, covering the left and right. But I thought it would be quite nice to sit these to the right so that it sort of balances the violas against the violins. The cellos are all the way on the right. And like I mentioned, with the bass instruments, even though in a proper orchestra, the double basses are panned to the right, I wanted this in the center to give some balance to the mix. I didn't want it to feel like it was weighted too much to the other side because of the bass frequencies. And also on the tracks, it's good to add some different doses of reverb. And like I mentioned, I use two reverbs, a short reverb and a long reverb. And then by using these reverb send effects, I can push the instrument back in the mix or bring it forward by having a more dry sound. So that's going through the basic mix processing that's been applied across the tracks. But also what's important is to add some volume automation to add to the dynamics of your mix. So for example, with these strings, you can see there's some volume automation going on. It increases during the short notes and then comes back down for the long notes and then jumps back up again for the short notes. And if I just zoom out, you can see that there's automation going across all the other tracks just to give some dynamic expression and interest in the mix. There's some fade outs, some fade ins, and this is all just adding to how you want to hear the track. So I'd recommend EQing each track, giving it a place to sit, using compression to tame any dynamics on any of the sounds, especially for example, your drum sounds where there may be some differences between the hardest and softest notes. Then using the reverbs to either push your sound back in the room or bring it forward, plus using reverb across all the tracks helps blend different tracks together so that they belong in the same space. And then finally, on the end, I've added some simple mastering process plugins. There's a multi-band compressor. You can see there's 4 different bands with different compression amounts applied and then some gain makeup. Now let me just play this through so you can have a look. You can see there's some compression going on across all the bands. except for the fourth band that's acting just like a gain dial. So when you push this up, it's increasing that high contents. So this plugin is really just a great way to even out the dynamics across the whole frequency spectrum. You can add differing amounts of compressions on the different bands to help even everything out, and boost any bands with the gain just to push them up in the mix. And then finally, there is a brick wall limiter on the end, and that's just giving about 6 dB perceived gain on top of the sound. That's just pushing it up so that it matches up with other commercial releases that it may be played against. And what's important with the limiter is just to make sure that you've pulled back the output ceiling a bit, just so there's no clipping that's going to be happening on the audio. So as you can see, it's quite simple from the mix point of view. You can get more involved depending on your source material and the instrument tracks that you use, but I found that I like to keep it simple and just do some very simple EQing, just maybe doing some cuts or boosts to accentuate or attenuate a part, and then using the reverbs to give it its space, adjusting the volume levels, add any automation if necessary, and then finishing off with some mastering plugins.